who had a great 4th of July was my Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. He, with the divine powers imbued within him by all that is holy, he was able to harangue, pressure, and threaten enough Republican senators to get his gorgeous legislation that rips health care away from 17 million Americans who are, they're economically pressured to the point that they need the Medicaid help. And now they'll have to get to GoFundMe like every other American, my friends. That's right. Because the people that Donald Trump golfs with, hangs out with, the sponsors of so much when it comes to legislation across the board in Washington, they wanted their tax cut and they were going to get it. And I don't want to hear about the Medicaid, blah, blah, blah. States are going to go under, blah, blah, blah. People are going to die, blah, blah, blah. They didn't, they tune that out, turn that off while they pushed that incredibly stuffed, toxic bill through Congress. It happened at the 11th hour. Trump saying, I want it by July 4th. Why did he want it by July 4th? For no reason at all. And isn't that Donald Trump straight through? Wall to wall, baby. Got no reason. Think it'll look better. If I get it by July 4th, it looks better. I can make the announcement. I like to make announcements. If you're new here, I don't do a Trump impression. I just do him as kind of a gangster, sort of. Here's what happened. Go ahead, Tony.
Gentlemen, our president.
It was the most significant legislative win for President Trump yet.
And tonight, here I am. Okay, promises count.
On Independence Day, signing into law the cornerstone of his domestic agenda.
It's the biggest bill of its type in history.
Republicans celebrating the sweeping legislation.
This big, beautiful bill fulfills all the promises in the America First agenda.
Beginning it over the finish line took arm twisting and deal making. Hardline Republicans initially balking at the price tag. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office projecting that the bill could add $3.4 trillion to the debt over the next decade. Senator Rand Paul joining just 2 other Senate Republicans to vote no.
This is not a fiscally conservative bill, and if you're someone who thinks the debt is a problem, I don't see how you could vote for this now.
The bill fulfills some of the president's key campaign pledges, like no taxes on tips and overtime, and it extends Trump's 2017 tax cuts at a cost of $4 trillion, much of that going to the wealthiest Americans.
Just as I promised, we're making the Trump tax cuts permanent and delivering no tax on tips, no tax on overtime.
The bill dramatically increases funding for immigration enforcement, allowing the administration to nearly double immigrant detention capacity and allocating more than $100 billion to ICE and border enforcement.
If you're for a secure border, safer communities, and a strong military, this bill is for you.
It also guts Biden-era clean energy protections and student loan forgiveness programs. And the legislation may have far-reaching consequences for some of America's most vulnerable populations. That's because to pay for it all, the legislation slashes the nation's safety net, including the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program known as SNAP. As of March, more than 42 million Americans participated in the program, which provides crucial nutritional assistance to families with low-paying jobs or people with disabilities. And despite promises from the president not to cut Medicaid,
here's what I want on Medicaid. We're not touching anything.
But we're not cutting Medicaid, we're not cutting Medicare.
the legislation hits the program hard, estimated to cause 11.8 million Americans to lose their health insurance over the next decade.
Make sure your voices are being heard.
Republicans claim they're looking to root out waste, fraud, and abuse within the program, imposing new work requirements on able-bodied recipients 19 to 64. But according to experts, the added paperwork and applications may lead to eligible Americans losing coverage.
This all-out assault on health care in this country. Hospitals will close. Nursing homes will shut down. People unable to get the care that they need.
even some Republicans calling it a mistake, warning it could backfire in the midterm elections.
It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made. You supporting the Senate mark will hurt people who are eligible and qualified for Medicaid.
For This Week, Rachel Scott, ABC News, Washington.
That's all I need to see there. Thank you. That gives you an overview, but even in that summary, there is a sort of glossing over of a lot of the specifics so that Trump, for example, can take this victory lap and he can say, I paid off on no tax on tips and this sort of thing. But as we know, the devil really is in those details because the tax on tips is a very low number. There's a very low minimum. But again, when it's reported, it's just reported as no tax on tips. And it becomes one more line item that's just sort of summarized in that brief network package. I guess what I'm trying to say with this point is that I believe that the true heinous nature of this act is covered by the generalities and the massiveness of it. So when you're doing a TV package on it, you just almost can't get in to all of the specifics. She did a nice job, I thought, of talking about the fact that the environmental aspects of this bill are truly gruesome. I mean, there is a complete detachment of this country from the rest of the world, which is going toward green energy, alternative energies, and a future that reduces fossil fuel production and consumption. This bill literally just takes us back toward 1955. I mean, it's a weird, that's just the environmental part of it. Then, as we mentioned, some of these other aspects of the bill just leave you in the sense bereft of government help. So many in this country require some small supplements, some require large supplements, some require a total rescue from the federal government for any number of circumstances around which they have no control. So look, the guy is a master legislator from the standpoint of, running America like a mobster. And you will do this or you will pay the consequences. It's LBJ who used to harangue various legislators to get votes back when he was president, but it's that times 10. I mean, it's almost, as I say, kind of like a mob boss president. So the other most disturbing aspect of this is this immense amount of money that's being poured into the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. Here it is. Justin Garner said it. We now have the largest secret police force on the planet. It's sickening. It really is. Sickening is the right word for what's happening with this increasing police force. The one that doesn't identify themselves. They have no real markings. We don't know whether or not they're legitimate or they're just a bunch of dudes who got dark clothing and a white van and are loading people in. The official ICE officers, they do enough damage. And so you never even need to get beyond the fact that now this force is going to be expanded. It is going to be additionally militarized as we do everything. And then it's going to be turned loose on the streets of America. I think it's despicable. It's un-American. It is a misguided policy. I think even those who voted for Donald Trump, who wanted to see some management of the border in a more responsible way, although, of course, that border legislation was ready to go 8 months before the election, but Trump derailed it because he wanted to use it as a political pawn, and he did. But I think even those who voted for Trump for that reason would be hard-pressed to say that they're okay with what's going on the streets of America now with these ICE detentions. And the arrests themselves, while heartbreaking and awful, and I think way out of bounds, going to Home Depot, Lowe's, kids' high school graduation, going to the courthouses. That's their new thing. These are immigrants who go for their court-appointed hearing to see to their asylum or on their way to a green card or green card renewal, whatever it might be. And they're picked up there. I mean, that is, it penalizes people who are lawfully trying to do the things that you're talking about. That is to say, a lawful entrance into this country and proceeding through that entire legal process. But it's also, it's despicable. It rewards really and incentivizes lawlessness. Don't go to the court. Don't get into America, and then don't go anywhere, because they'll arrest you at your court case.
Yeah.
And then, of
When
course,
you're trying to follow the law and you get busted for trying to do the right thing.
And of course, the deportation then to a third country of which you have no understanding, no connection, right? It's that, of course, just legalized by the Supreme Court. That's not part of this bill. But the supercharging of DHS, that is part of this bill. And who's in charge of DHS? I mean, Kristi Noem, and Homan takes a bunch of it, right? He's the big, he's doing the heavy lift in terms of deportation, and Stephen Miller as architect. What else do you have for me, Tony? Wes says, will they cut off people who are in mid-care like cancer patients? How do you prove to Medicaid that you are eligible? No one talks specifics. Oh, they'll most certainly cut you off in mid-care. I don't know specifically, as you don't either, but I promise you, these are draconian cuts. Look at what happened in every other part of government up to this point that has been cut. They've cut things in the middle of scientific research on cancer, in the middle of research projects on Alzheimer's, in the middle of environmental projects, 5 years out. They just pull the plug, pull the funding. It's done. Trump made a ton of promises in campaign, has only kept one, says Debbie. Quote, I will be a dictator on day one. Supposedly for one day. He lies about that too. Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the policy is enhanced, I suppose, by the dictatorial powers given to Trump by the Supreme Court, but Trump didn't take those powers. I mean, this, in other words, this bill, I've just told you how awful I think it is, but it wasn't dictatorial. He leaned on these legislators and made them vote for it. And then finally, they gave Lisa Murkowski everything but a family picnic to get her to vote for this thing. They gave all of these gifts to Alaska. And that's the way business can be done in Washington. It's really one of the worst things about the way business is done in Washington. But back to Trump. So it was Trump's awfulness, if you will, that may create this environment. I'm not a Trump fan. I think he is a pernicious force on government and American life. He's enabled, I think, hatred and a kind of legislation that reinforces hatred. You see it even with the excesses of wokeism and DEI. If you want to get into that world, you can see how this breaking back against it is really fueled by a kind of hatred and resentment. And I just see that as a sad chapter in American history. But again, a lot of what's happening with Trump is owing to his strength. He is fearless about using his power. He will use it against you in every way possible. He's cowed academic institutions. He cows the media. He cows the legal system, all of those attorneys and law firms that he went after, and now they're doing, they couldn't wait to surrender and do that pro bono work for him. So it's the atmosphere and environment that has been taken advantage of by this guy Trump, and now he's feeling it because he just passed this big legislation. He's got a lot of power. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.